Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Susanne, for this event. It's a pleasure to have you. I know you for a long time. I think when I started my studies in Germany, the first interest I had, I wanted to check on who are the best project managers around. And I think your site came up. And I think in so many cases we have interacted. So thank you so much for joining me for today's podcast. Would you mind telling my audience like who you are and what you do? I know you are a very amazing person.
Oh, thank you. Sure. It's really good to see you again after this. Some years definitely have passed.
Yes.
Yes. So I coached you, and that's what I do for most of my time. I'm a coach. I coach a lot of project managers, a lot of program managers. I also coach executives, and I run leadership training. Yeah. And I founded the Project Leadership Institute, and we actually run mostly leadership training for project managers. So that's my world. And of course, for those who are watching, there's the book, the Power of Project Leadership in a second edition. So yeah.
So you are also an author, yeah, and I know that you also write. You have very good blog also about leadership. Could you tell the audience about that too?
About the blog?
Yes.
So I guess I used to post every month, and then because that's like 12 in the last 10, 12, 15 years. And at some point I just got too busy recently. So I do blog as well, and I write regularly for the APM, the magazine. Yes. Which is a print magazine. It's a quarterly, But on my own website, maybe I do still write regular blogs, but it's not every month anymore.
Yes. Yeah. I think.
And actually, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm actually writing another book at the moment. But it's not about project management. It's much more about personal development. It's much more about being in difficult situations. So it's very applicable to all of us, really, because the more I work with managers and leaders, the more I see that it's really the emotional piece that trips us all up. So how do we stay with challenging emotions and be in it without having to change, thinking that is the other person who is the issue? But also the book is also about finding a life with more purpose. So part of the book is about changing the things that you can change and want to change. And the other part of the book is accepting that which we cannot change and sitting with what is.
Yes. Okay. That's really nice. It sounds to me like a book by, I think, Pedagogy or something like that, who wrote Zen Project Manager.
Aha. It's just that this book is actually not for project managers. It's actually for broader audience. But yeah.
Yes. And now let's go to our main topic today. Our main topic is going to be leadership in project management. So that would give me then an avenue to quickly, straightly ask you about like few questions. And my first question was, who is a great leader from your perspective, having worked with project managers, especially in the context of project management? And also, I would really like to know, normally as a project manager, there's always aspect of management and leadership. So how do you differentiate that one? Like those two?
So in my own career, I have come across more good managers than I have come across good leaders. Because, and maybe I should just, as you said, define how do I look at those two different terms?
Yes.
It's just terminology, right? So people might think of it differently. I'm not saying this is the only way of looking at it. It's just the way I think of it. I think of a manager as somebody who is really good at executing somebody. Mm-hmm. Somebody who is good at, they have the right knowledge, they're on top of it, they're very organized, they know the right things, they're good at telling people what to do, so they're good at they're very task oriented normally.
Yes.
And they're good with the processes, and they're probably good with being in a place where we optimize processes as well.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily about doing something new, it's not necessarily about creating something new, but it's about maintaining and optimizing. That's how I think mostly of management.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the way that a manager relates to another person is often one where they give orders, maybe not that harshly, but somebody who feels they need to know the answers and be in control.
Yes.
And who think of others as subordinates. I would contrast that to a leader. And I must also say that this is not just related to somebody's title. Anyone can be a leader. A parent can be a leader. Somebody who works for a voluntary organization can be a leader. It's not dependent on the title. It's more dependent on our attitude.
Yes.
So the attitude of a leader for me is somebody who isn't just task-oriented or focused on the status quo and optimizing. It's really somebody who has a large amount of emotional intelligence and who can actually lead us to something new, who can think about, well, where are we at the moment? Where do we need to go? And how do we close the gap? And closing the gap is always about bringing people with you. It's embedded in leadership. It has that people element.
Yes.
And that's why exactly, that's why I often say that a manager can have a lot of cognitive intelligence.
Yes.
A leader, hopefully they also are cognitively intelligent, but it's very hard to be a good leader without having that emotional intelligence where you can relate to people, where you can understand people, understand what makes each person tick, because you're moving them from a state where we are today to somewhere in the future where we
yes,
building something new, basically.
Yes. Yeah, actually, that one reminds me a lot about the situations where I learned, for example, in project management, that when we manage things. And if you want to work with people, you have to lead. So that means that you have to then, like what you said, you talk about then emotional intelligence. That means you have to come to these people's level and think about how they think, and then influence them, kind of persuade them to, from where they are, and then to achieving the vision, for example, the strategic goal of the organization or of the company.
Yeah, when you use the word persuade or influence, that is a part of it. So a part of it is being inspiring and selling the vision and
Yes.
making it inspiring to follow. Another part of it is actually really leading from behind. So somebody who leads from the front is like, hey, guys and girls, we need to go this way. This is going to be great. We're going to make a big difference in the world by doing this project.
Yes, I see.
But leading from behind is also a big part of a leader's job, which is more the coaching aspect. So it's more understanding what makes each person tick and what is that intrinsic motivation that can make each person want to contribute fully to this project.
I see. Yeah. Yes. I remember. Yeah, that one really relates with what I think I worked several times in, like when I was in Kenya with organizations, and there's sometimes when I just had I was given like a big team, and most of them were more experienced, but I was kind of only experienced in Kenyan context, and I had to work with international teams. So the idea was like, I'm given a team, most of them were professional in their 50s, 40s, and I was like 20. So the thing was that at some point I learned that if I have an idea, I would walk to individual and talk to them, and if they bought the idea, then later they were the ones who talking about the idea because they understood it. And then I didn't have to, because I was a bit shy also, I didn't have to push the idea, but now it was a discussion, like everyone then took the idea, and some of the people also just took the idea and ran with it. So I think is that something similar to what you're saying, like leading from behind?
I think what you're doing there is also leading from the front.
From in front. Okay.
Yeah, because you're presenting the idea, and some of them really resonated with it.
Okay. So how in your context, how will that one, for example, in a normal business, or let's say project management, how would that one manifest, for example?
So leading from the front is more about
from behind now, because I think I've understood.
It's more about telling, whereas leading from behind is more about asking questions. So how can we do this? How do you think we can move forward? What are you willing to do to, or what next steps will you take? So you're encouraging the individual to move forward. And if they're not inspired, you can ask them, well, what will make you feel more inspired about working on this project? So I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm asking you individually what would make you more inspired. So I tap into the individual rather than trying to sell them something.
Wow. Yeah. Now
You see, there is a big difference.
Yes, because that's a perspective that I never looked at it. For me, I thought I was actually doing it from behind. And now that one, that discussion now leads us to some phrase that I found from someone called Lolly Daskal. I think he's also like a leadership personnel, and he had some like this quote, like he said, to become a good leader, you need to destroy limitation inside your mind. So now still going on as leader, like from the idea of like leadership, from your perspective, also from your experience, what limitation do you think leaders have, and how do they, go? How do they go about destroying these limitations so that they become good leaders?
It was a really powerful quote you had there, and I think you could actually expand the quote. It's not just to be a good leader you need to destroy limitations of your mind.
Yes.
We all have limitations, and if we want to progress in life, and I don't just mean progress and earn more and buy more, I mean progress as humans and work with our triggers. That's a favorite word of mine, because we all have situations that trigger us, and we may react instead of respond. We can perhaps get to that later, but if we want to become a wiser person, we need to work with the limitations of our mind.
Exactly.
So, and fear is a limitation that we probably all have.
Yes.
Right? Now, specifically to leaders. And why is that? It's because we are wired to survive. So our brain is constantly in the background, constantly scanning without our conscious awareness for threats, because that's how we are built. And that keeps us, back in Kenya, when you run around in the bush and you have a wild animal back there, it's, the brain doesn't relax. So basically, what are some of the fears that the leader isn't running around, apart from you, in the bush in Kenya? So what are some of the fears that leaders come across? Well, that's really, I think, fear of not being good enough, or fear of failure. That's a big one.
Yes.
Perhaps fear of the feedback. Maybe I'm not afraid of the feedback, but I'm afraid of the feedback making me feel small. So when we stand up and lead, or, it requires us to speak and to take center stage, even if we're not a world stage leader, we're still a leader of our projects.
That's true.
People are going to judge us. People are going to look at us. They're going to hear what we say, and they're going to form an opinion. And they're going to have feedback if we ask them for it, and that can be scary to some people, and I think that's a good place to start.
Yes, and that relates to me a lot. Also, remember when we were doing coaching the first time, my biggest fear was like, I'm getting into this industry, I have no idea what's going on. I'm totally new, and I'm not a German, and like everything is so foreign. And then again, you are getting a new job, and there's also like a chance like you lose the job if you don't perform. And so those are stuff that I think came out very clearly. And another thing is, I think I did another podcast with a friend of mine. He was my classmate, and he's now in the automotive industry, and he was telling me, we were talking about how many times how many times are the how do you call it, like the projects are always in a green state. And he was like, it was never like 80% of the time when they were running the project was always like either in orange state or red state. So then that means like if you try to do an analysis of the entire project, you start having the fear that you may lose the job, you may lose a lot of money, you may so those are some of the limitations that I actually observed, and I also shared with people, and they told me something like that. And what he also told me that was very interesting was that in the automotive industry, if they give you part, like just a small piece to produce, if you make some mistake, the automatic, like the line, like that, if you delay, like they charge per minute. So any delay because of some errors would be charged per minute, and the cost will be put on you. So I think as a project manager, this is something that I also think, yes, that as a limitation, you start thinking like, hey, if I mess this project up, the company that I'm working for will be charged, will go bankrupt and all the stuff. So yes.
But the thing is, because these are really ways of thinking. So sometimes there may be real limitations that we need to watch out for. There may be real dangers we need to watch out for. But many of the limitations, as you call it, of our mind, they're of the mind. So we can actually work with them, and we can. Yeah. I don't think we can just magically make them go away, even if I do like to say so. I have a magic wand here, you know. But
yeah, you can't do like and change the situation.
But we can diminish them. We can exactly. Work with them. We can become aware of our limitations, and yes. We can work to gradually replace them.
Yes, I mean, I totally agree with you. And I think also, like you said something, I think in the beginning that was very crucial. You said with project management, like I think about the book you are writing when you said something like, which from me understood that it also have to do with, you working on yourself. It's like a continuous procedure for you to work on yourself, to work on your limitation, and the limitations are not ending. So that is something that, they always come. If you change environment, you have a different limitations and risks that are involved. Yes, especially in project management. Cool. I would like to go to another question, and this is one of my favorite questions, especially when it comes to the false alarm that comes with project management. And these are the three. I have like two alarms, and this also comes from my experience working. When I remember one of my project manager, like my supervisor, we had the backlog, and he came and said, I think if I leave this company for 5 years, I will come back and the backlog will not finish anything from the backlog. I was like, are you serious? Like, that is how, that's how tough it is. And that means that the idea of like, can we improve productivity? So that's where the question comes from. What is your take when people say, because of the backlog, we need to double our productivity? So what do you think about that?
Well, I guess there are two sides to the answer, because if there is no progress on the backlog at all, if there's an issue, if there's a systemic issue that we're not capable, we do need to address the issue. But I don't think that's what you're alluding to here. I think what you're saying is you were actually making progress.
Yes.
You were working effectively, but then because the backlog grows.
Yes.
Well, how do we get through it quicker? We need to, crank up the productivity. Exactly. and unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Sometimes you can add more people, but those people need to be trained, and there is a limit to how many people can work through things as well. So yes. I think it's just about having a conversation with our managers and clients sometimes, and explaining that it's not like you can just go and turn the handle. But if there is an issue with productivity, we do need to address it, of course.
Yes. I think I totally agree with you, because it's in some cases, as a project manager, you reach a situation where like, it can always, sometimes be like a suggestion, like, hey guys, I think at the moment, the rate at which our backlog is growing, we have very few people. So one suggestion would be like, we need to either add people, or we need to be more productive, which it's like among some other suggestions that are always there. Do you agree with that? Because that is not the only solution, for example, no?
Absolutely, it's not the only solution, no. But I think oftentimes we need that proper conversation in order to be able to understand what's the real problem. It's only when we understand what the real problem is that we can actually come up with a proper solution. And sometimes not just managers, but sometimes we all have a tendency to jump at it and just look at the quick fix. But the quick fix is not always realistic or possible.
Yes, and then the second one is about people. So the question goes, people work better if you put them under pressure.
Well, on that one, because before I thought, well, there's two sides to it. This one I think is pretty one-sided, because most of our research shows that it's psychological safety that makes people work better. So all the science and high-performing teams and the stuff I write about in my book and teach people is how do we create a safe space? Not a safe space where we not the kind of safe space that people sometimes talk about in public life, where you're not allowed to give feedback to each other, but a kind of a place where all team members can come forward with their ideas, and maybe there is even space for me to make a mistake without being penalized. So when we have an environment where there is psychological safety, where I can be real with who I am and I can speak my mind, and then what happens is that everybody contributes much more. And that is what creates productivity and potentially high performance. It's one of the factors. It's not the only factor. But if I don't have a whip around here, but if I just have a whip, right, and I just, as you say, increase the pressure, that can actually have the opposite effect. But it's very common. Most organizations, many organizations, I should say, do it. They take on more projects than they know is possible, and they just push, and they know that something is going to break, but they hope for the best. And managers think that if they don't push, we don't get any productivity. So the result, unfortunately, is often that people burn out, because the good people don't want to say no. So it's a very challenging and tricky situation.
And that is very critical that you say that, because there was an evaluation that I read, I don't know from who, but the idea was that as a good project manager, when you do your evaluation and like project is done, now you're doing a report, we should actually do a report on the team also. So the case was that there was a project was very successful, but they were losing two people. One was divorcing, the other person was had a burnout, and of course, for the company they wanted to employ other people. But then as a project manager, so the idea was like, how do you evaluate your project successful if during the work you lost two of your project team members? So that is something that is also very critical when you do, like, if you are evaluating yourself as a project manager.
And what does success look like? Are we just are we just measuring whether we delivered the output in time, cost, quality, or are we also measuring, was it sustainable for our people?
Yes. So that's what I agree with that. I think that's what I was alluding to, because when you think about it's always we look at projects just from the three aspects, cost, time, and did we achieve it in the right scope, with the right scope, and also with did we achieve the quality? So when most people just look at the project with those terms, while when you think about teams, like you said, now the sustainability, also with your team, can I still keep my team and also work in another project? Something.
I think there is more awareness about it now, definitely, than 10, 15, 20 years ago. And one of the aspects that help us is to measure success over like a 5-year period. It's not just success today, but in 5 years' time, would I still say that this project is successful? Well, we've lost half of our people. We had to recruit, and the recruitment costs were really high. And so, well, then you begin to see it in a bigger picture.
I totally agree with you. That's the way to look at it, and I think I totally agree with you in that. And that one, so let's move to the next question. That one, I think we've addressed that one very well, and I really like the way we are going so far. Now, project management has teams, and in this team, normally the computation of teams, you always have a composition of team of different personalities, different people. So I have two kind of like different people that I want us to talk about. And these are the needy. Like as a project manager, you get to know a team, and then of course it's always you always have people different personalities, and then you have needy, you have the bully, and then you have the takers. So let me just clarify this one to our audience. So needy are the people who before they do anything, they always ask you. They cannot do anything by themselves. It's like you are the boss, you tell them everything to do. They need your help everywhere. Then takers are the people who always try to take some of your time. So for example, if you are going to another meeting, they would be like, yeah, can you also write me some, can you write my report, or can you spend some time for me and do something for me? So they take most of your time. You're only not about your time, but also they take, I would say, also they may use also your stuff, like maybe your computer, just because they messed up with theirs or something like that. And then we have the bully. The bullies are the people who just, they take advantage and just look down upon other team members. So as a project manager, this composition, how would you handle this, and how do you deal with these personalities?
I think your two first examples, they're quite similar. So it sounds like they're both kind of needy. There's somebody who's needy, who takes a lot, and who is maybe perhaps not working so independently, from what I understand you're describing. And because we're dealing with people, we have to be very careful that we're not jumping to conclusion. It's very frustrating as a project manager when somebody takes up a lot of your time and they need a lot of instruction and they're not very self-driven. Yeah. And so it's easy to just get frustrated and want to replace that person with somebody else, to be honest. Yeah. Perhaps that person needs training. Perhaps that person has a lack of confidence. So there's a reason. It's all about getting to the root cause. And this is probably where we need a few, some certainly emotional intelligence skills, some coaching skills, to begin to ask the person and what's going on for them, and find out what the root cause is. Because there's a very big difference between somebody who doesn't have the answers because they're new, yes, and somebody who just lacks the confidence. So, but in either case, I think it's very good to start with somebody who is like that. It's likely they're junior people, not necessarily, but it's very likely. And then it's good to start with very small assignments and just give them one assignment and make sure they're briefed properly. Ask them all the questions up front. What else do you need to know? Do you have everything you need? How can I support you during this process? So make sure that everything is covered before we delegate this. So, so the bully, I think, is a very different scenario. And actually, I don't personally, I have been very fortunate. I haven't worked with anyone with that behavior. But certain personality types need feedback. And if somebody is bullying, and I know there's some clients, you're talking about a team member here, clients can also be bullies, especially in some industries where clients just really are derogative and they speak down to others and they are unreasonable. And in that case, we do need to give very clear feedback, and we need to give examples, because if you say to somebody, you can't say to somebody you bully, that's not going to work. Yeah, so we need to understand how to give proper feedback, and proper feedback, a part of proper feedback is about feeding back on somebody's behavior and saying, when you do this, it has that effect.
Okay.
So very specifically, when I've observed this behavior from you, not I've heard about, no, I have seen, it needs to come from the person who's observed it. I've seen this, that has this behavior. Let's talk about it.
Wow. That one
we're definitely not going to bully them back. All right. Don't start belittling them and yes. No, we just got to say, this is the behavior and it has that effect. Let's talk about it, because it's not constructive and it needs to change.
Yeah, that's amazing, April. I never thought about it like that. I was just like, yeah, because I mean, in real situations, sometimes you just get so like people get into your nerve as a project manager, and then you really, like you said, you really need to then work on yourself to actually realize and also share with people like now we are sharing, so that we see another perspective from people like some like that. Now that you talk about it, now I'm like, oh, aha, this one is a very good idea. Just to look at the action and then the impact and talk about it. Because of course, if we are talking about bullies, then you know that by just telling them you're bullying, that one kind of is what actually they're looking for. So that's kind of like, yeah, let me bully you again. So let's continue. So it's like, so yes, I totally.
Plus, labels are not helpful.
Yes.
You know, it's not helpful to use labels. We need to talk about the behavior. That's the only thing that works.
Yeah. So because of time, I would jump and go to the last question, because I think we have very few minutes. I want to ask you from your perspective, you have someone new like me. When I met you and you're coaching me, you want to get into project management or leadership positions. So what are some essentials that someone needs to, consider, or at least, like we said, learn by themselves, so that they make good leaders?
Well, there are some key aspects we already touched upon. One of them is self-awareness, because it's the most difficult person we'll ever get to lead is ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think a really good habit is to ask for feedback, because when I ask for feedback, I increase my awareness about myself. So everybody should get in the habit of asking for feedback, and we can't please everybody. That's not what this is about.
Exactly. No,
but if several people say, oh, you're not very clear in your communication, or whatever our feedback is, then we can do something about it. So also, obviously, I am a coach, so I'm biased, but working with a coach like you did is actually a really good idea, because it's like somebody holds up a mirror to you and they reflect back to you what you're saying, what you're doing.
Yes.
And that increases self-awareness, and the coach can obviously help somebody work on the level that is required of that specific person. But as an overarching answer, I would say it's that emotional intelligence that needs to be worked on, because most project managers, they get with some knowledge of the subject matter. I think that has to be said. We do need knowledge. We do need some competence. We do need to understand the client's situation and what we're building for them and delivering for them.
Yes.
Beyond that, is a lot of it is about people, because we are leading people.
Exactly.
Projects are about people. So it's about taking workshops or understanding psychology in any way that people can study and learn about psychology, observe others, observe ourselves, journal and reflect. It's really self-reflective exercises, I would say.
So then, you talk about emotional intelligence, you talk about coaching, and then you also talk about self-awareness, like working on yourself.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Susanne, for the session we had. It has been a wonderful session for me, for the audience. Your time, we appreciate so much, and I think you've had and also you've learned from what we discussed about regarding project management, leadership, and it's just amazing. We keep going like this. Thank you so much for your time, and God bless you.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yes.